Without long-termism and localism, businesses will perish.
Hello, and welcome to the show, Colourful Conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. This week we debate the 7 deadly sins of business. Well, despite ranks of highly paid executives and consultants, it's strange that big businesses can take decisions that seem somewhat baffling and, in some cases, extremely self-destructive. What are those sins that actually undermine businesses today? Well, many reports have actually studied the actions of executive decision makers and actually tried to determine what on earth actually happens at board level to make what seemingly on the surface seems to be big organizations, successful ones, suddenly turn and fail quite dramatically. We've seen the demise of many high street retailers. We've seen big construction companies disappear. My word, what and also is going on in other areas, small businesses, medium businesses? Is it possibly that they're not looking at localism, using the local talent, long-termism, having a vision? Well, with me today is Clergyman Pete. So, Clergyman Pete, I know that we've talked a lot about localism and long-termism, but for some reason, I don't know why, but companies are still failing and still acting on short-term measures.
Well, I think this is a constant problem here. I noticed that quite a lot of companies do not tune into the program regularly, and so they're missing out on insights in how to run their business. Well, the thing is, of course, there are, as you all know, working in the business sphere, that despite best practices, being well known, people will still go on instinct. They will go for what's always been done, and they will also act out of short-term selfish motives. And so you're going to get businesses behaving in ways that, as you were saying earlier, are actually self-destructive.
Yes. Well, look, analysts actually sort of cite a number of reasons, and we're going to go through the 7 deadly sins of business, and that is the Mark and Pete view of business.
Of course. Yes.
Which, of course, ultimately is what everyone really needs to see what's going on.
It's the correct view. I think that's what you're saying, yeah.
Now, I'm going to start with what some people might claim is some of the high-level reasons. One, of course, is actually sort of complacency. Effectively, you get to a position of power, and suddenly you think that success will last forever. And here's one very good example. Nokia is a very good example, where at one time, certainly in the late 90s, going into the 21st century, they dominated the phone market. And let's be honest, they didn't really innovate. And as we know from a lot of their competitors, they moved into smartphones, and of course Nokia got left behind. But then we look at some of the big retailers, and we've seen some big stores disappear from the high street. And one of the reasons that they claim is they just haven't innovated from a technological viewpoint, that they've perhaps been so reliant on traditional practices. The high street alone is not enough. Maybe you should look at an online strategy as well. Well, all these things are well and good, but what about other things? Well, if you're going to succeed in business, some people say, well, don't get too greedy. Yes, I think that there's something in this. So I'm going to give the Mark and Pete view of the 7 deadly sins of business, the modern career guide to success. So number 1. Failing to massage your manager's ego every day can be career damaging and will restrict your pay. Mm-hmm. Number 2, if you are error prone and make a big mistake, blame someone else to take the headache. Number 3, having frivolously spent all the budget, pretend it's an accrual, then let the accountant meet the auditor for a financial duel. Mm-hmm. Number 4, when asked why you have submitted extravagant expenses, accuse the executives at the office party had lost all their senses. Number 5, when a project goes well and all the company receives great praise, just claim it was purely your idea and then ask for a huge raise. Number 6, if you finally get caught and are guilty of insider trading, just offer a big bribe. It can be surprisingly persuading. Number 7. But the greatest sin in business is never committing a crime. Success is stabbing people in backs and just killing time.
Yes.
Let's go through. I think that we've got to the core of
it.
it.
Well, I mean, that's just a normal day in the Mark and Pete offices. Yes. Yeah.
But let's take an element of truth here, because let's be honest. Perhaps, possibly, many of our listeners might relate to that, thinking, yes, that's the real reason things go wrong. If we look about it, let's take the first one. Managing your manager's ego. Well, it is quite strange. We've talked about this in previous episodes of Mark Compete, which is actually some people seem awfully aloof. And in management, particularly in that middle management fat area, as I'd like to describe, really only people sort of survive on status more than on ability. And it's interesting that you have to be somewhat sycophantic, I think, a little bit in today's short-term world that we live in, where everything is all based around image. And would you say, Clergyman Pete, that there's an element of truth in the sense that you do have to do a lot?
Well, look, yes. I think that the Mark and Pete view is, of course, to encourage you to always act with integrity. However, that doesn't mean that you don't recognise tactically what you need to do. And if that means, yes, massaging their ego, without, of course, lying, you can still manage your manager. I think that's how you have to see it. There's a well-known, I think we've referred to it before, a well-known concept called 360-degree leadership, which, you can lead even from underneath, even if someone is your manager, you can show leadership in the way that you behave with them. So in that sense, yes, I think that you can behave with integrity, but still keep them happy.
Yes. Now, here's the second one, which is, of course, if you are error-prone and make a big mistake, blame somewhere else to take the headache. Now, I'd like to sort of reference a few people here. So, yes, Philip Green, I know that you made a big mistake. Let's be honest. Perhaps when you actually took over BHS, and more importantly, when you sold it, you did leave people with a big mistake to have to handle. Now, what is it here that perhaps some people just blame others, don't they? And they're not really being accountable. So actually leadership is really important here, isn't it? So perhaps we need more leaders to be a little bit more subservient, a little bit more honest, perhaps.
Yes, it's the honesty. And although, of course, there's always going to be people who will abuse their positions.
Yes.
If the expectations are high, then at least there's a chance of people behaving with integrity. There's more of a chance, that's what I'm trying to say, of people behaving with integrity. You need to have the expectations at the highest when it comes to integrity in business, because that's what it's all based on, isn't it? Mm. If you don't have that integrity, you can't really have free trade.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
And then the whole thing falls apart. So I think the highest possible standards need to be expected. Yes, you're not always going to catch out people who are cheating the system or cheating their companies or cheating their customers, wherever it might be. But if at least there's this expectation there, then there's going to be fewer who will do it. Partly because, people are not totally selfish in the sense that money comes first. No, that isn't it. People, of course, can be tempted to do things just for the sake of money. But no, how they view themselves is the first thing. Face your place in the hierarchy. That's very important to people. And if it's very important to have integrity, that's one of the things, for purely selfish reasons, they're going to go for. So that's what I would say. We need to encourage an atmosphere, a culture of integrity.
Well, that's right. And in fact, it comes down to the third one I raised, which is, of course, around finances, which is extraordinary how auditors haven't picked things up, have they? Tesco's. So when we think about those companies like Tesco's who actually falsified some of their profits, that in itself is poor. And in fact, we can go back even to the beginning of the 21st century when Enron, the energy company, just simply survived on hiding billions, in fact, dollars worth of debts, and then ultimately collapsed. Now, it's all very well that the auditors would hopefully find the loopholes, but it's not always easy, especially in big companies. So should we be looking at perhaps a different way of reviewing things? Because at the moment, there are many examples where having independent auditors isn't enough. And I know that this is something that was raised recently with some of those companies that perhaps have managed to hide debts, which, again, lacks that transparency.
Yes. Well, I think that the only real way in the end is personal integrity of each person involved. In the end, you have to admit you're never going to have a system in place which will stop anyone. But there are other ways of being accountable, as you say, bringing in an accountant to audit. Good, yes, that is a good thing to do. But you could have ongoing transparency, couldn't you? There's no reason for it just to be in an annual report. What I'm saying is that it could be particularly, as we might say, in this day and age, with technology as it is, you would be able to have you being not having to have your accounts public all the time, but still be able to be seen by a third party to check that you're not. That would be pretty easy with the sort of accounting packages that are available these days. So do it, or make it a requisite of having a company.
Well, the fourth one I raised was probably touching upon culture. Partying is a good thing in the right way, but when you overdo it and you become extravagant and wasteful, especially whether you're an office worker or an executive.
Yes. Now you say
this is strange.
You say partying is a good thing. Now, I don't think I've been to a party that's actually been really entertaining. I mean, they're entertaining to laugh at people, but they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be better off doing something. You want to, in other words, maybe going to work and working on an interesting project. That would be better, I think.
Yes.
So, I do think that the culture of partying, which now, I think there's another show coming up about this, but another of our shows, but particularly alcohol consumption in British society is such that if there's any sort of celebration, there must be alcohol available. You have to drink a lot of it, otherwise it's not a real party. Now with the younger people, there's other drugs of choice, but personally, I think if it's not coffee, then it's not really.
I challenge that. I'd say, sir. I say if it's not tea,
yes, so tea. Well, yes, I would say that really your drug of choice should be caffeine to get you back to work.
Oh well, of course,
yes,
of course,
get Absolutely. You alert and back to work. We don't want any of this. So I think that's it is a cultural problem. There's an expectation that you will behave in what is really an unhelpful manner. That's not the only way to celebrate. There would be better ways of celebrating than partying at all.
Quite. Well, I mean, when you receive praise, or certainly the company does, that's a great honour for the department, the company as a whole. But I'm sure there are many listeners are sitting here thinking, hold on, why is it that the manager always seems to get the accolade and walk away with the trophy? It just seems that perhaps there should be a little bit more sharing. Now, here's a good one as a very good example where actually sharing does work. So one of the big high street retailers and online retailers now is John Lewis. Now, they have this sort of worker sharing mindset where effectively you have a stakeholding into the praise and success of the business. Now, that's actually worked very well for them. So I know you can scale this up and down to an individual project or the overall success of a business, but I like their model because it works quite well and it's sustainable and it's long term. They actually think about investment in individuals. It's not just about praising one person; it's about the collective. What do you think about the John Lewis model?
Well, yes, I think that having having methods of in something that encourages you it's surprising actually how effective it can be. If you compare it to something that I know more about, the religious communities. One of the things that works well, if you like, encourages people to perform better, is receiving praise and public, even though people pretend that they don't like it. It still has the effect. Interestingly, tests have shown that even people who profess not to like public acclaim, they do actually respond well to it. And so, I think that is one model that you could take. And surely there are different ways that you can put into place that are going to reward the right behaviour for your business to succeed, without going down the route of offering cocaine off hookers' bellies.
Well, indeed, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, I think maybe we need to leave that out of the Mark and Pete Christmas party this year.
Not again. That's the only thing I look forward to.
But look, you did say you wanted some snow, but I didn't know that's what you meant here. Anyway, moving on.
Well, the sixth one I mentioned really is corruption. And it is extraordinary even today that whether you get acts of corruption at all levels in business. But I mentioned insider trading, that's only one of them. But bribing people, officials, etc., it still goes on. Why is it that people think that that's a means to success? I'm baffled at why people think they can get away with it, Clergyman Pete. What's going on?
Yes. Well, I paid it you all back. What are you talking about? Yes,
thank you.
Look, the thing, yes, it is a strange way of behaving. But this goes back to the point I was making earlier about expectations of integrity. And if I think that there's a lack of shame in that. Yes, I talked about face and people wanted to maintain face, but if they'd been deemed to be corrupt but clever, I don't think many people wouldn't see themselves as losing face. If you've been stupid, that's losing face. That's if you're being shown to be stupid. But simply being shown to be dishonest doesn't have the effect anymore. It's really a religious thing. The church, and dare I say, the Church of England, as it, if you're talking about in British culture, has become rather weak and flabby and anodyne and doesn't push for integrity. And that's part of a whole cultural shift away from these high standards. I mean, it used to be that if you said to someone who's British that you were an Englishman, you're being an Englishman, it meant that you were behaving with integrity. It used to be, let's take race, play the white man used to mean you've got to behave with integrity, because obviously in the days of that still most, but pretty much all English people were white, so that's why that was used. But there was an expectation that you would be honest all the time, even when people couldn't see, and that is being lost. And I really don't think that it can be regained without, a religious revival in this country, a Christian revival. I don't, of course, mean other religions, because it's specifically a Christian and Jewish, so often called the Judeo-Christian tradition, to be completely honest, including when people can't see you.
Yes. Well, and of course the final one, which is really sort of a summary of the whole thing, which is about this point of fear and culture and really this idea of that we can see this maliciousness that sometimes creeps in. I jokingly mentioned that obviously never committing a crime is obviously a sin, but of course committing any crime is a sin. This idea of stabbing somebody in the back and just really riding your time just to sort of profit from other people's misfortunes. And in fact, other companies have changed their fortunes quite dramatically. And I'll give you one example to sort of conclude this this show. Wix, this is the trading and DIY chain, had a terrible culture. And in fact, it even went as far as nearly going into collapsing due to an accountancy fraud. But they changed the whole culture. What they did is they got new management in place. They assessed the whole board, that's the C-suite, and brought in new leadership, basically to sort of bring a more open and fairer way of working. And it has worked. And so actually, for those individuals who, are sort of thinking about, well, short-termism is the way to gain, we disagree on the Mark and Pete Show. We believe that actually honesty, fairness, and long-termism is the way forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
yes. Don't do it. Don't lie.
So listeners,
I'll send Mark round.
Exactly, the 7 deadly sins of business, according to Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. But what do you think? Maybe you actually know of some issues yourself. Maybe there's something that you could give us as an exclusive. Well, why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts. Fill out the comments panel on the show and perhaps read and listen to some of the other comments that other people have made. Well, I know that we've raised 7 deadly sins. Well, I'd just like to leave you with the 8th deadly sin, which, of course, is ultimately not listening to the next Mark and Pete show. So, listeners, thanks for joining our show today, and we look forward to joining you and having more discussions with Mark and Pete. Toodle pip.